word is breaking, or the news is breaking, that during the time that the Capitol was under attack and Donald Trump tweeted out, quote, Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what should have been done to protect our country and our Constitution. He tweeted that at 2:24 p.m., which was 10 minutes after the rioters had broken into the Capitol. His tweet went viral among all the people in the Capitol. They were looking at their smartphones going, holy cow. They got his tweet, and they started chanting, hang Mike Pence. They'd already built a gallows out on the lawn of the Capitol building, and I'm still wondering, who the hell built that gallows? Why don't we know? It was not a small thing. Somebody brought a pile of wood and bolts and screws and tools and a rope and knew how to make a hangman's noose. Who did that? I am hopeful we will find this out next month when we hear and see the hearings from the House Select Committee. But testimony now from 3 different people, according to sources inside or around the January 6th committee, who are all anonymous at this moment. But this is solid reporting. It's by Betsy Woodruff and Swan and Kyle Cheney over at Politico. The headline, in fact, Trump expressed support for hanging Pence during Capitol riot. When Lincoln was assassinated, it produced a change in our government. We recovered from it in a couple of years. But Lincoln, in the election of 1864, Lincoln wanted to heal the country, wanted to bring the country back together. His first vice president was another Republican, somebody who was opposed to slavery. Forgive me for not remembering his name. His second vice president was Andrew Johnson. And he picked Andrew Johnson to be his second vice president because Andrew Johnson owned slaves. In fact, one of them was a young 13-year-old that he had bought and then abused fairly egregiously, and was a Southerner. I believe he was from Tennessee. I might be wrong. I'd have to go back and look. But so the vice president was a Democrat and a slaveholder when Lincoln was assassinated, which is exactly what John Wilkes Booth knew was going to happen. And this was their hope, that they would reverse the victory of the Union. Well, at that point, reverse the victory of the Union and restore the Confederacy. Sic semper tyrannis, right? Death to tyrants, is John Wilkes Booth's cry as he assassinated Lincoln. And it did, for several years, put the United States government, the federal government, back into the hands, or at least the executive branch of it, back into the hands of a pro-slavery right-winger. And in fact, the way Congress responded to that, because there was an open seat on the Supreme Court at that moment, Congress responded to that by reducing the size of the Supreme Court. They passed a law that cut the size of the Supreme Court. As I recall, it was by 2 seats. I might be wrong, but they reduced the size of the Supreme Court. And then after Johnson was out of office and had been impeached, not convicted, but after his term in office, just like Trump, after his term in office expired, then Ulysses Grant became president, a Republican, and he said, okay, that's it. Let's re-expand the Supreme Court. They expanded it back up to 9, which is where it's been ever since, because there were 9 circuits. There are now 13 circuits. We should have 13 members of the Supreme Court, but in any case. So how is Trump wanting to assassinate Mike Pence, who was like the last person trying to hold the republic together from being torn apart by Trump and his friend Putin? How is this different? I mean, other than the fact that Trump wasn't able to do it. He tried. He tried really hard. Like I said, he tweeted, At 10 minutes after they breached the Capitol, he gave them their orders. He tweeted, Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what should have been done to protect our country and our Constitution. It's astonishing, isn't it? Another story I wanted to share with you that I think is absolutely amazing. This is breaking news over at Reuters and on the Financial Times. The United Kingdom. Keep in mind, it's run by a conservative, Boris Johnson. He's like, a Republican. Britain announced a 25% windfall. This is from Reuters. Britain announced a 25% windfall tax on oil and gas producer profits on Thursday, alongside a £15 billion package, that's $18.9 billion, of supports for households struggling to meet soaring energy bills. The move, which will give each UK household a £400 discount on their energy bill and more for lowest income households, £400, about $450, $500, marks a change of heart for Prime Minister Boris Johnson's government, which had previously resisted windfall taxes, calling them a deterrent to investment. Hey, if conservative Boris Johnson can say, we're going, right now here in the United States, our fossil fuel companies, from little companies like Joe Manchin's to big companies like Chevron and Exxon, are showing in some cases the largest profits they have ever shown in history. Billions of dollars a month. And Boris Johnson's looking at the same thing with BP, with the fossil fuel companies there in England or in the United Kingdom, if they can put a windfall profits tax on it and say, and you know what we're going to do with the money from this tax? We're going to cycle it back down to homeowners. We should be able to do the same thing here. And to drivers. Here is an example for you, President Biden. Take a windfall profits tax on the oil industry and give that money to Americans to pay for gas. Meanwhile, over in Italy, there is a major lawsuit that actually is in court. It's going to be decided sometime in the next couple months. They're expecting a verdict this fall. The trial is still ongoing, saying that Silvio Berlusconi, the Donald Trump of Italy, complete with bunga bunga parties, he was accused of sexual assault, he was a grifter, he was a billionaire. Remember the old saying, behind every fortune, there's a great crime? Anyhow, the lawsuit, they are suing Berlusconi personally for damages for harming the country of Italy's reputation on the international stage, making a fool of Italy. They're trying to get 10 million pounds out of him. The amount, Berlusconi can write a check for 10 million pounds and not even, or $10 million, excuse me, $10 million and not even $11.24 million and not even know it. The point is to make the point. I think this is brilliant. We should be doing the same for George W. Bush, who lied us into the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Afghanistan, of course, Mullah Omar, the Taliban, had offered to arrest Osama bin Laden for us. We said, no, we'd rather have a war. And then Iraq did nothing to provoke a war. They even let the inspectors go everywhere in the country, right? Even into the presidential palace. But George W. Bush wanted his war, so he lied us into 2 wars. He should be apologizing to the world, and we should be suing him demanding an apology. And then, of course, Donald Trump turning our intelligence agencies over to Vladimir Putin, shutting down the Office of Cybersecurity czar in the White House, shutting down the Homeland Security Department's office, firing the head of it, Office of Cybersecurity, so that in the last 2 years of the Trump administration, we didn't discover this until Biden came into office. In fact, it was discovered by a private company, by FireEye. Remember this? The SolarWinds thing? We discovered that during the last 2 years of the Trump administration, the Russians had been inside our government computers. They were inside the Commerce Department. They were inside the Treasury Department. We know for sure. The CIA is refusing to say. The Pentagon is refusing to say. The Department of State is refusing to say. But Donald Trump just opened the door to the Russians. Here, Mr. Putin, come on in. I still want to build a hotel in Moscow. And by the way, you know, a bunch of your oligarchs are, own a whole bunch of Trump properties, and I want to keep them happy. It's amazing. It's amazing. Is it time? What do you think? Is it time for America to ask Bush and Trump to pay for their damage to our reputation? It's not like either of them can't afford it. 16 minutes past the hour. I'll pick up your calls on the other side of this break.